So mock is object-oriented programming. Mock is a simulating object that mimic the behavior. So a mock is someone that simulate the behavior. There's some people talk about mock, stub. Honestly, stub, mock, there are other names as well, doubles. I like to use mock because mock is one specific type of double. Uh, it becomes a little bit confusing, especially when you are using an SJS, for example. So let's call it mock, but I know there is some difference between mock, stub, and so on, but they're not worried about that. So mock is something that replicate the behavior of a dependency, of a function. So if you think in terms of your, so you are going to call system under test. So system under test is what you want to test. For our case, our system under test is always going to be a class. So this class they will be differentiated with a decorator. In TypeScript, how we call decorator. Decorator is the at from your email that we are going to see during the course that separate between, for example, service, a class, a component. So the system under test is whatever you are testing. So the system may have several dependencies. In our case, the dependency is going to be, for example, HTTP service. In our case, all the depends going to be a service. If you are in another language, if you are in another system, you may have different type of dependence, such as your dependence I do have a course here in which the dependence, it was also in SJS, the dependence was Mongoose, which is a database access to MongoDB. But in our case, our dependence is going to be a service, which is a special type of class. So in the case of mock, we are going to replace all the dependencies with a kind of, you may say, a very simplistic, a very rude, and a very bad, if no details of your function. So the principle that you should keep in your mind that you should test behavior. You never test implementation. So a mock is not concerned about the details, about how, see that we are not going to replicate all the small details of your function. No, we just want to replicate how your function is supposed to behave. So when you replicate that, you are able to make your test of your system on the test without concern about the external interference. That's the idea. When you think about mock, the metaphor that I like to think is a car. Before you release a car for people to use, they have one thing that they call they must test how much gas, how much toxic gas, how much CO, how much CO2, how much toxic gas it's releasing. That's a kind of quality control. But they do not test your car on the street. They do not test your car on the road. They test your car in a kind of a lab, in a controlled environment. So you may say that they mock your wheels because they mock your street because they replace your street by a kind of the wheels going to go around, but the car is not moving. The car is not moving, but uh, uh, but here on the lower part, this part moves. So you may say that that's a mock of your street because the main behavior of your street is going to be mocked. But your street may have a hole, your street may have imperfection, your street may have land, it may have stones. It doesn't matter. You just say that I want to mock just the street. So that's how they do. By doing that, they can test the amount of toxic gas that will release. As in the case of a mock, people can people can people can, how they say, you may miss some kind of important behavior because in that the dynamic of the motor of the car motor is very complex. It happened, even though the scandal of Volkswagen, the scandal was precisely because of that. The Volkswagen, they create a kind of motor that was going to release different gas when it was on the road and when it was being tested. So they cheated. They created a way that the system would pass the test, but when they were on the road, they release much more gas than supposed to release. So they cheat on the test. That was a scandal of Volkswagen. So as you see, in the case of mock, it can be the same. The mock, if you want to cheat on the mock, yeah, you can't cheat on the mock. You can create a mock that's going to pass, but that's up to the developer. That's up to the developer. Something that's not very easy for us to do. So if the coder, if the programmer wants to cheat, wants to create some kind of a fake behavior, it's not that hard. So advantage of mocks. So mocks isolate the system on the test from the world around them. That was the case of the car. So we isolated the car from the street. Mock protect the system on the test from external failure, such as if you have your dependence fails, because someone is fixing, or even you are fixing the panels, your the other one that's using your dependence is not going to fail. Mocks can help you to understand the patterns. So it can even help you to have a better idea about, for in my case, as I was working with mocks for MongoDB, it even helped me to understand better how it works. As I was working in tests on Angular as well, it helped me to understand even how Angular works, even the behind the scene, because you have to know. That's one of the drawback, and can be advantage as well. The drawback, you have to understand what you are doing. So if you don't understand your depends, if you don't understand what the depends supposed to behavior, it cannot make a mock. It's possible. So mock can make the unit test fast. I mean, at least because you don't have the depends anymore. So if it took, for example, 1 second to get back your response, you don't have this anymore, because the mock is just a kind of simplistic version of your dependence. So that's the advantage that I see. So the advantage, life is not perfect. It can be cumbersome to create mocks. It can be very boring, very like demanding to create this mock. But the good news is that people always create mocks. Angular, they have people like me, like you, like developers. Sometimes they create this mock and so on, and they make them available for you for free. You can just npm install. We are going to use a mock that was created by somebody else. That's auto mock. I myself have been here. The only attention that I would tell you that some company, they don't accept mock and so on that is from third party uh, developers. So because they can trust very much. I remember the case of a student that I was teaching online, that I advised her to use a mock that was developed online. She said that the organization didn't allow them to use mock because, I mean, they did. I don't know the reason besides, but I think they just trust official release. If there is a mock that is released by the company, by the group themselves, they may trust. Otherwise, you have to create the mock by yourself. So mock can hide bad depend design. I mean, what do I mean? I mean that if you have a very, because in the case of, I don't know about your case, but in the case of Nest.js, in the case of Angular, in the case of this kind of component-based framework such as Nest.js and Angular, the core idea that your components should be loosely attached. So the more you are connected, the more you are making things that depend from each other is bad. It's a very bad dependence. It's a very bad design. So mock can hide that, because uh, you can just isolate, then you don't know how badly they are connected. So mock do not test how the parts go together. So that's called. So that here come another separation between the London school and the classical school. The classical school is going to consider that when the parts are talking to each other, that's still a unit test, as long as they behave, as long as they have just one behavior. But in the case of the London school, the one that they use mock a lot, they consider that if two parts talk to each other, they are called integration tests. So this is the difference. I know that's too much to remember, that's too much to know. If it's the first time you are seeing this kind of topic, don't worry. Just try to learn as much as you can here on this part. Then when you go to action, you just come back to this part, or you read another book. Take your time. I have done that a lot. I never worry very much about the understand the first time I learn something, the first time I read a book, I'm never concerned to learn at once. So, I just learn as much as I can, then I come back, I learn as much as I can, then I come back, and so on. So don't worry if all of this stuff can be confused. So mock may require from you know what you are mocking. As I said before, if you don't understand what you are mocking, if you don't understand what your sub supposed to give out, it's impossible. You cannot mock what you don't understand. That's a drawback because you have to understand. I see that as advantage, to be honest, because that forces you to understand what you are working with instead of just keeping using. So I'm not going to follow any specific school. I'm going to follow what I think is most appropriate. So nonetheless, you may be an organization, I have seen this kind of example, that people adopt one line of thinking only, mainly. Because I mean, since they are an organization, they need to they stand out inside the organization, so they may require you to follow one specific pattern. I don't know if that exists. I don't know, but I know that in the case of English, some people ask you to use British, some people ask you to use American English as just one.